When you're a codependent and you're wrapped in a relationship with an addict, I thought she was taking medicine to get away from me. I thought she was escaping me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can make her feel happy and feel better, that makes me feel happy and better. It's just a vicious cycle of you're not going to take medicine anymore, and her addictive side's like, oh, yes, I am. This went on for 13 years that we just battled each other. And it wasn't at the very end when this friend said, hey, you need to go see the Christian counselor. I finally ended up going, and I was there 15 minutes. Very first session, 15 minutes, and he's like, you're part of the problem. What? I wanted to punch this dude. You're a codependent. And he's like, you're just not using drugs, you're just using emotions. You're destroying your family just as much as she is.
Welcome to Silent No Longer, where your past is a chapter and not the whole book. I'm Mesha, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a safe, judgment-free space for anyone who has lived through toxic or abusive relationships and is ready to heal. I know what it's like to feel trapped, unheard, and unseen. Through faith and healing, I found my way forward, and now my purpose is to help others do the same. Here we share real stories of resiliency, growth, and transformation from people who have walked through trauma and come out stronger. My hope is that you'll be reminded that you are not alone, your past does not define you, and healing is possible. If you're ready to take the next step, you can learn more in my book, Behind Closed Doors, or schedule a free clarity call with me. Today I'm joined with Steve. He has faced the challenges of codependency while partnering with a spouse battling addiction, all while serving as a pastor and a church leader. His path took significant turn when he walked away from God, only to find his way back, reigniting his faith in a profound new way. Thank you for being here today, Steve.
Mesha, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Can you just start out by telling us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I'm a mess. I was a mess. Yeah, it goes all the way back. It goes all the way back to childhood. I was abandoned by my real mother at the age of 4. And I had an alcoholic father that loved me, the best he could, but filled me with, I'm not going to be that good, and I'm going to be less than, and just had all those feelings that we have growing up of insecurities and just not good enough for him and everything else. Add to that, I was molested in a construction trailer at the age of 6 and was told that if I told anybody, we'd get in a lot of trouble. Well, if you knew my father and how much trouble I got in, I wasn't going to say anything to him because, man, I don't like being in trouble. So I held that in for most of my life. Actually, I didn't tell anybody, not a soul, until I was in counseling quite a few years later. Move forward, I married thought the love of my life. I married and went to a church and found out that I was going to be called into ministry after I came to the Lord. Now, if you remember back in the 90s, there was the Promise Keepers, and it was a men's ministry. We did a lot with raising men up to be good fathers, good leaders, good husbands, good businessmen. And I'd come home after those conferences and those speakings, and I was like, man, I just feel called to preach to men like this someday. Well, during that process, I was also starting a business, so business kind of took off, and I went down that road. I mean, I still loved the Lord. We still went to church, but having that, not knowing that I had codependency, I was trying to, later on, I found out that I was trying to fulfill all the needs that I needed emotionally. I'm an important business leader. I'm a president of a company. Employees need me. People need me. Not knowing that's what's going on, but went down that road, did well with the company. And we ended up moving from St. Louis, Missouri to Columbus, Ohio. And during that whole process before the move, I found my ex-wife, to be using pain medications. I went down into the basement. I was looking for something. I don't remember what I was looking for, but then I found all these bags. And back in the 90s, it was real easy to doctor shop and go get all these pills and have 5 doctors and get all these pills. But back in the 90s, when you got a prescription, they stapled everything, all the information to this bag. It's a little bit different nowadays, and it had the quantity, who the doctor was. And I just had all these grocery bags filled with all these prescription pain medicines. And that obviously rocked my world. She ended up going into outpatient clinic.
Mhm.
And, so what do? Well, you just run from your problem. So we ended up moving to Columbus, Ohio. Figured we'd get away from all the doctors. She'd start clean. So we move to Columbus, Ohio. And then all of a sudden, these neighbors that our kids were playing with said, "Hey, you want to go to church?" And we're like, we haven't been to a church up here yet. Yeah, we'll go. And we ended up going. And it was just like the preacher was just speaking to me again. And I felt
Mhm.
that calling again. I felt God saying, this is what I called you to do. So I ended up going to lunch with the pastor. He takes me under wing. I end up doing a stint at a Grace Seminary. I do a stint at Liberty University.
Mm.
I become a children's pastor of 150 people. End up being a Wanda commander. I was a Celebrate Recovery leader, doing all this stuff. Ended up planting a church. Had a radio ministry, and man, things were going great with the Lord, right?
Mhm.
All the while keeping a secret that my wife was battling an addiction again. Because what happened was I went and had a appendicitis,
Mhm.
and she took my pain medicine. Called the doctor, said that I needed more, that I lost it. I ended up going back to the doctor, and he's like, "Do you need more pain medicine? You went through 2 bottles already." I said, "I haven't touched it. What are you talking about?" You want to talk about shame and anger and all that just being built up. Go home, and then the fight started, and we still kept it secret. Went to church, and by this point, I was just a complete wreck.
Mhm.
Complete wreck. I'm keeping everything from the church. I've got this view of God that he's kind of like my father. He tolerates me. Jesus is here sneaking me in the back door because I smell like dung, you know, but why isn't God wanting to work on me? Why isn't he wanting to fix my wife? What's going on here? So I just had all these different just emotions going on and didn't know how to handle it. And I was just mad at him. I was mad at everybody, took it out on my kids, took it out on my wife. No transformation whatsoever. You know, my kids see me loving on all these people, go home and then take it out on them, take it out on my wife, ex-wife, and it was just a mess. It got to the point where I was so frustrated, got so tired of her passing out on the front row at church that I just walked away. I completely just walked away, handed it over to another church, and we ended up moving out of that town. I walked away from God and I said, "If you're not going to fix this, I'll fix it." And
Mm.
then I went through 2 years of hell from that point without God, trying to do it myself, wouldn't go to church, wouldn't do anything. And it was probably the closest thing to hell that somebody would ever feel.
Yeah. That
So that's
happens
my
when you
story up to that point.
Yeah,
Isn't it
definitely
a happy
happens when
story,
you
Misha?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been there, I've taken God out of my life so many times just because I felt shame and didn't think that I deserved his love, basically. Um, and the first time I did that was so my cousin molested me my entire life. And then
Oh,
when I was a teenager, he brainwashed me to think that I was in love with him. And I thought we were gonna like run away together and blah blah blah. I finally got myself out of that before it was too late. And then he ended up raping me. And then after that, I
I'm
just
sorry.
put God up there. I was like, because I put all the blame on myself. Like I could if I would have done this or if I would have done that. Like I basically blamed myself and didn't think that I deserved God's love at this point. And after that, my everything went downhill in my life. So yeah, that happens when you take God out. But he's just sitting there waiting for you to come back and call his name out and say, "Okay, I need you. I'm ready. Fix
Yes.
me." So yeah, but I definitely know what it's like to put God to the side because you can do everything on your own or you don't think that you deserve him. I've done it many times in my life. Now I don't do that. I'm like, I can't do anything on my own.
Yeah.
He's the only person who can do anything for me, really. That's how I feel now. So yeah. But that was just that was when the cycles really started in my life because then I just fell. I fell so hard and I just fell in one bad relationship after another after another. And it's not like God was totally out of my life, like, he was still there. I still prayed to him, I still talked to him, but I didn't really ask for his help. And then when I was with the toward the end of my relationship with my kids' dad, because we were off and on for, like, 12 years, and I can remember I almost committed suicide, and I was laying in the tub, and I was like, "Oh, this would be a perfect opportunity," and he's all like, "Yeah, but who would find you?" And I started crying because it would have been my kids.
Oh,
So,
wow,
that's when
yeah.
I was like, "Okay, I can't do this without you. This is not okay. This is not what I want for my life. This isn't what I want for my kids' life. So, if I'm gonna do this, I need your help." And he did. He helped me out of the whole situation, got me all set up, and then I don't know what happened. I just ended up in another bad relationship, but I just think that that's just because I didn't do healing afterwards. I didn't go through everything, and I didn't know that I needed healed because I grew up one toxic relationship after another. So, everything that was in my life was normal to me. But this time, I know that it's not normal, and I'm doing the healing. I'm gonna do it right.
Right, right.
So, yeah, and that's why and God called me in to do this and just, like, get the word out there that toxic relationships, you know, they're not healthy. And even if you are a Christian, because that was my thing, I'm a Christian, I shouldn't get a divorce, doesn't mean you have to stay in it, because God doesn't want you miserable. He doesn't want you in a relationship that's gonna hurt you. He wants you to be loved the way that He loves you. So, well,
Amen,
that's my
yeah.
story.
Yeah, no,
My short story.
y a
But
lot of people have the same story.
mhm,
Similar, maybe different little different circumstances, but we all we're all insecure, and it was a good friend of mine that said, "Hey, go see this Christian counselor." "I'm a man, I don't need a Christian counselor, I just need her to stop doing drugs and we'll be fine,"
mhm,
Because when you're codependent and you're wrapped in a relationship with an addict, I thought she was taking medicine to get away from me. I thought she was escaping me.
mhm,
So if I can make her feel happy and feel better, that makes me feel happy and better.
mhm,
And it's just a vicious cycle of you're not going to take medicine anymore. And her addictive side's like, oh, yes, I am. And it was a 13-year battle. This went on for 13 years that we just battled each other. And it wasn't at the very end, as I said, that I walked away from everything. And when this friend said, hey, you need to go see the Christian counselor, I finally ended up going. And I was there 15 minutes, very first session, 15 minutes. And he's like, you're part of the problem. What? I wanted to punch this dude. He said, you're part of the problem. You're a codependent. And he's like, you're just not using drugs. You're just using emotions. You're destroying your family just as much as she is. And that
mhm.
just rocked my world. That just threw me off. And I was so mad. I walked out of that office at the end of that session. I stayed, but I walked away and went home and I got on the computer and looked up codependency because I didn't know what it was. And it wasn't a word that really floated around back there in the, late 90s, early 2000s and
Yeah,
mid 2000s. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm the savior part of codependency. And that's why that's why I felt so great being a pastor. Everybody needed me. I was wanted,
mhm.
but I wasn't transformed.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about what codependency is for those who don't really know?
Yeah, the simple way to put it is if you put all your self worth and value into another human being and you're only as good as they are that day, you're a codependent. So if that person gets up and is in a bad mood and it has nothing to do with you, you're wrecked. You're completely wrecked because you think it's automatically you and you feel the shame and you did something wrong and then you press into them and then it turns into a fight because you want to find out and fix it.
Mhm,
And then you're wrecked for another 3, 4, 5 days because now you guys are fighting. And now you feel even more shameful because now you made her not like you even more or him or her. So
mhm,
anytime you're putting your value into somebody else, you're only as good as they are, you have codependency.
mm,
And it's when you don't really know that you have needs. You don't even know you have emotional needs. You're not even thinking of that. There's no boundary there whatsoever. So you're putting everything on them and you're only as good as they are without thinking anything about you. And I did that for so long in my life. That's codependency.
okay. I've
Simple
heard the word
version.
before, yeah, I've heard the word before. I see a lot of reels about all the different things that you could be. But
Yeah, I mean, codependency comes in different ways. I was the
mhm.
savior. I was the fixer. I was going to fix everybody. I always wanted to fix everything, fix everybody because it make me feel better. Because I'm so insecure,
Yeah.
and because I put all my emotions in everybody else. So if I fix everything, I'm the hero. I'm happy, whatnot. But part of codependency is love addiction. There's love addiction in there. There's some people are codependent and are addicts, and it's just tying yourself emotionally to somebody else, but you're living almost through their emotions. So you're, like I said, you're only as good as they are.
Mhm.
If they're having a bad day, you're wrecked. And I mean, you're wrecked for a while. And if they're having a
Mm.
good day, man, you're higher than anything. And then you have a bad, and that's where a lot of domestic violence is codependency, because the female, usually in those situations, they're on high when the relationship's going good. And then all of a sudden she does something wrong. And unfortunately, she gets hit or slapped or verbally abused.
Mhm.
And then she's a complete wreck and everything's her fault and she's shameful. And then when he's in a good mood, she's up again. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's a big, big one in codependency as well.
Yeah, I think my problem was, I didn't really feel like anybody loved me growing up, so I would
Yep.
try doing every single thing possible to make the person feel loved because that was my way, I guess, of showing love. I'm not sure, but I noticed that when I was going through my healing. It's like
Yeah.
my whole life was based off from making them feel good about themselves because then maybe they would like me back.
Right.
Like
It's just a shameful feeling. My mom
mhm,
took off from me. My dad didn't like me that much. Nobody likes me. I needed people to like me. I needed to feel secure with somebody liking me. So when you're married to an addict and they're focused on their trauma and their issues and trying to
mhm.
escape and manage that, they don't have any love for you. So it just becomes a mess. It really does.
So where are you now in life since you've done your healing and realized what you needed to work on?
Well, I'm in a great place. I'd like to say I'm healed. I'm transformed.
Mhm,
Um, but we always have triggers.
mhm.
They're always there. But what happened was when I was at the counselor, and this just didn't happen. I went to a counselor and I got fixed and all this. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
this is another 10, 11 years that I'm
Mhm,
now back in ministry, that I went through all this process. But when I found out about codependency and I started to go back, and I went to him for 6 years, and something profound he said. He said, "You need to find your identity in Jesus Christ." I said, "What are you talking about? I was a pastor for years. I
mhm,
know the Bible. I teach it. What do you mean?" He's like, no. You may know God, but you don't know God. He's like, you know about him, but you don't know him. He's like, you're living under an adoptive sonship in the kingdom. And he's like, you've got to understand your full inheritance and be a spiritual son with the full inheritance of the kingdom. And I was like, wow. Then I came across John 14:20, where Jesus says, that day you will know. It's going to click with you. I'm going to paraphrase this, but he says, that day you're going to know. It's just going to click that I'm in the Father's in me, and we're living this life in you in a union,
mhm,
and we're doing this life together. And when I hit that verse, I'm like, I've never read that verse with the power that it had at that time. And it clicked. It's like, wait a minute, God's not out here angry, waiting for me to mess up. Jesus sneaking me in the back door because I smell like poo, and the
mm,
Holy Spirit's just floating around and I need him, whenever I need a butler, right? So that kind of reshaped my whole view of Christianity, and started to dive deep into that. And I started to dig deep into that, started to go back to church with a bunch of walls up. And it was really baby steps getting back into a church, and just understanding that, wait a minute, there's this union here. And
mhm,
once I fully started to surrender, which in any kind of recovery, you have to just surrender. You have to surrender to God. And once I started to do that and let him work on me, it was like, hey man, I was there the entire time, and you're the one that shut me out. And he was like, I want to fix your ex-wife. I wanted to do that. But what's more important to me is your heart and what
mhm.
you do. And once I realized that, I got myself focused, I got myself healed, I got myself transformed, and that way then I can save my family and move on. And fortunately, I went through a divorce. I felt that I had to save my kids and save, I had 3 boys, and I had to save them and get them out of that situation now that I was starting to see clearly and all the damage that I did and try to make amends with them and go through that process. And, along the way, ended up getting remarried, and the wife that I have today, Sarah, just a beautiful lady inside and out, no codependency. She loves me for who I am.
Mhm.
um, but moving on with that, and there was the last piece of the puzzle. Okay, God, are you ever going to use me for ministry again, or are we done? And that's when things started to happen. Ended up writing a book, and I'm real big with recovery. I want to help people get unstuck from any unhealthy bad habit. And that's where the ministry started. I ended up writing a book called God's Imperfect Plan is Perfect. And I think it was more for not to me to be a bookseller, but it was more for me to heal.
Mhm.
So I wrote this book about my story and how we look at God. And, when we even taught in church that God's got this perfect plan for you, right? He's gonna you're going to get married. You're going to have 4 kids. You're going to live in a yellow house, and you're going to have a dog named Boomer, and you're going to work at the accounting firm. Well, what happens when your house is yellow? You're married. You only get 2 kids, and you can't have a dog. Your wife wants a cat. You can't even name it Boomer, and you work at the gas station. You're not working at the accounting firm. Where are you at? You're a mess, right?
Mhm.
So we blame God, and we're like, "Oh, no, well, you had this perfect plan." And so you just have to go back and connect all these dots where God was in your entire life and how all this is working out. And it's a perfect plan. Because what we think is a plan that he has, that he's going to do all these things for us, it's just a plan of, you know what, we're made for the kingdom. You're going to be love, you're going to be light. That's our plan. It's a simple plan. We just make it complicated. But that's where I'm at today. I have this ministry. I help people in recovery. I help just launching this online 12-step community. It's a 12-step program that is for your identity in Jesus Christ. So it's just to be there 24/7 so people can always have community and always have 12 step. Because I know when I went to Celebrate Recovery and I was a part of Celebrate Recovery, sometimes I couldn't wait till Thursday for a meeting. I needed to talk to people. I needed the support now.
Mhm.
So I created it for that. Or I know a lot of young ladies that are just trying to keep their life together, a roof over their head. They have 2 jobs, they got 3 kids, and the only time they can do step work is at 11 o'clock at night when they put everybody to bed. Well, there's no meetings at that late.
Mhm.
And it's hard to miss work to go to meetings. So I created it for that as well. So I do that. I speak around at different recovery groups and churches and stuff like that. And then I'm also a coach, and I help people become unstuck one on one. And God's great. Yeah.
Mm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, about, like, my whole journey of, like, just trying to figure out why a lot of things happen in your life is because I had my whole life figured out. I knew that I wanted to be a search tech and that I was gonna get married and I was gonna have these kids and blah, 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 and my life was gonna be perfect. And then I was raped and my whole life fell apart, and I didn't know how to handle it, and since it was family, I didn't tell nobody, and then eventually they did find out, and that was a whole mess in itself. I ended up having a really bad car accident that made me lose my schooling, and I already had kids at this time. I was with their dad, and we had to move in to the house that I was molested and raped in, lived there for 5
Mm.
years, on top of being in severe pain from the car accident, and so, yeah, I felt like in a really bad depression and being in a really bad relationship on top of it, you know? And I was just like, that's why I ended up where I was with laying in the bathtub. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this cannot be the end of my story, you know? Like, a lot of things have happened to me, and it's like, where am I going to go from here? And I had no idea. And I think that was the scariest part. It was like the first time in my life where I didn't have my life planned out. It was just I couldn't even picture anything in front of me. All I could think of was the pain that I was in physically and the pain that I was in, like, mentally and emotionally and everything else. And I was just in so far deep. And then I, decided to leave the kids as dad, and then I just prayed, and I just told him, I was like, "If you want me out of this situation, you're gonna have to do it for me," because I hadn't worked in so long, I couldn't get a job. So after I prayed and just gave it all to God, like, I got a job. The landlord let me stay there for free. He got me back into school, and I was like, "When am I gonna go to s" I had no plan B at all, like, nothing. And he got me into counseling, so I started that, but it took me so long to get through that, that I couldn't even go into counseling because then you had to have your master's. And I was like, "Now what am I gonna do?" And I was at that roadblock again, you know? I was like, "Okay, I guess just apply for any jobs that I can find." So that's how I ended up in case management, which I love. Um, but then I got into my marriage, and I got into, like, I felt, like, stuck because I was praying for my marriage so hard, but nothing was changing, and every single time something did change, he would admit that it was just him doing it to show that he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. It wasn't because, like, he wanted to. And, for an example, I was praying for him really, really hard or for our marriage, and, all the things, and then he got baptized. And I was for sure that this was the breaking point to everything, right? Everything seemed went great, like, even the church did this whole video on it. Come to find out, he just did it because he felt like he should to show that he was doing something good, and he felt like that's what he was supposed to do. I was like, "What?" But when he got baptized, then he started coming at us, um, like, "Well, God said this, so you shouldn't do this," sort of thing. So then we were fighting because of that, and I was just like, "Okay, I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna fight about what God thinks and what," I that's just one area I will not go. It's like, "Nope, not doing it." And it just I don't know, you go through all these things, and eventually I was just like, "You know what? I'm done praying for the marriage. I'm just gonna pray for myself. Let God heal me because I know I need a lot of healing," right? And I told him, my husband was addicted to porn, and my cousin had taught me that anything sexual was being loved. And my husband would never even come near me. So it really affected the marriage and me. And I was just like, and I can remember my entire life, I always cried about to God about, like, why doesn't anybody love me? And he's like, let me love you. And I started crying. I was like, okay. He's like, let me show you what love is. And he did. It was interesting because I had a girl that I recorded with earlier, and she went through Corinthians where, like, writes down, like, all of what love is. And I did
Mhm.
the same thing when he told me that. I, like, Googled, like, what is love in the Bible, and, like, it took me to the same place. And I was like, it's kind of interesting that both of us ended up in the same place in the Bible during that time of our healing. So I went through that and I wrote it all down, and I had to sit there and tell myself every single day, and just like God loved me, and then finally he showed me what love was. And then I came to the conclusion that my marriage isn't love. And as much as I wanted my marriage to work, I knew it wasn't going to because he had to do a lot of healing himself and he didn't want to do that healing. So I was just like, okay. And I was kind of, um, I was going to wait until like kids were all 18, because my kids are older teenagers. But one day God's like, you need to get out now before it's too late. And I didn't know what that meant. And later on, I found out what that meant. Um, it's in my book, but the person does want me talking about it on my podcast. But if you read my book, it's in there. But yeah, so I got out and I was divorced in 2 months, and he let me have the house and very quick. So, but after the divorce, I struggled with my faith because I got a divorce. Even though God told me to, I still struggled because you're not supposed to get a divorce. You're supposed to make it work. I went on a whole journey of just feeling lost because I put pressure on myself of, disappointed God again. Even though I didn't.
Don't. Don't fall into religious shame.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
that's
know.
not healthy. That's not healthy.
But yeah, so I drug myself out of there, and I still struggle with the whole church aspect of going to church, and I just I don't know why I can't get into it. Like I have a relationship with God. I just can't I don't know why I just can't get into the church how I used to. But then I look back and I don't know if I was ever really, really into the church or if it was just the groups and the people and we did like church gatherings at their homes. And I got more into it and more out of that in my faith than I ever have going to church. But I don't
Especially
know.
if you have a lot of distrust and trauma through that situation. I totally
Mhm.
understand it. I was took me a while to get back into church too, but it wasn't I came in under a new light that there's so many untransformed people in church. So we've
Mhm.
sold church. We sold the gossip is buy your ticket to heaven. Okay.
Mhm.
And you're good to go. God loves you. You're a good human being and you're blameless. And, you got your ticket, but there's no transformation.
Mhm.
Where's the transformation? Everybody was transformed in the Bible from the inside out. If you come to know the Lord and you're starting this transformation, then why are people still jerks in church? You know,
Yeah.
I've seen people at church get done preaching, go eat lunch at the Cracker Barrel, and they're cursing the waitress up and down because the order's wrong.
Mhm.
And you just sat in a pew 45 minutes ago, you know, and it's a shame. So that's why I'm trying to help people get unstuck from that stuff and do the same thing. But I totally understand where you're at and pray that you get over that because community is important. You know,
Mhm.
we are the church. The people are the church. The building's not the church. I do get that and do believe that 100%. But community's important and being around other people are important.
Yeah, probably my deal. I don't let people in enough to get community.
Yeah. Totally understandable from your story for
Mhm.
just what I've heard, us talking prior to this but I pray that you do get that healing. Being totally free is amazing. The truth will set you free. I used to
Mhm.
think that was just a Christian cliche in the Bible. The truth's going to set you free. No, it sets
Yeah.
you free. There's victory beyond healing. There's just total victory. And again, it's to have the power to be able to understand those triggers when they come up. Because the
Mhm.
same thing, I'm going to get on this podcast and they're going to think I'm an idiot. I suck. I'm not good enough. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, 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 whoa. Nope. Christ, that's not who you made me be. That's not my image. That's not who I am. That's the devil come to kill, steal and destroy.
Mhm.
So it's just having the swords to be able to fight that battle when it comes in. But it is it is rewarding and it is freeing. So I hope that, because I still, like I said, I still go to Celebrate Recoveries and I still help out here and there. I mean, I'm not called to pastor a church anymore, but I still go to small group. Still very involved, even though I don't, you know, a lot of the churches still, like I said, we're going, here's your ticket. That's where we're going. And I think we're supposed to be transformed and living this out here. Heaven's going to be great. Don't get me wrong. And I can't wait, but we're supposed
Yeah.
to live that out here. The kingdom's here and now. We're supposed to love, be light here and now.
Mhm.
And the devil doesn't care if you go to church. The devil doesn't care if you're in ministry. The devil doesn't care if you help the kids every Sunday. The devil doesn't care if you help Awana. As long as you leave that church and you're not a light and you don't shine and you don't love on other people and you're so self-centered, he wins. That's what he wants.
Mhm.
It's easy. Everybody thinks the devil's all evil and he's got a couple aisles of evil at his big warehouse store, but most of it is if I can divide families and if I can make people feel less than, I win.
Yep. Very true.
Yeah. I lived it. I know it. I
Mhm.
lived my whole life feeling less than.
Yeah.
And,
I just want everybody
part of
to
me,
be loved and happy. That's it.
yeah, but you have to, we have to forgive a lot of stuff. We have to surrender. We have to, as I said, we have to surrender a lot of stuff. I was praying with God and it's like, why, I thought we were going to do this ministry. Why? And, you're not ready. You're not ready. Okay. Well, why am I not ready? This is months. I'm like, I've forgiven everybody. He's like, you need to forgive. It's like, okay, I forgive everybody.
Mhm.
He's like, you've never forgiven yourself.
Yeah.
and I just bawled and was crying in prayer. And I never forgave myself for being a horrible father to my boys. And I never forgave myself for not being able to fix my ex-wife because she passed away of an overdose.
Mhm.
I never forgave myself for that. And until I did, that's when things started to move forward for me.
Mm. Yeah, same here. I had to, forgive my mom because I felt she was the reason why my cousin was so easily able to get me attached to him. Um, and then I had to forgive him, and then but the hardest thing was forgiving myself, and same as you, bawled my eyes out, like, that was the hardest. It's weird how forgiving yourself for things is harder than forgiving other people.
Isn't it?
Mhm.
It's very freeing, but it is very
Yeah.
until it was brought to my attention, it was like, wow, because I wasn't
Mhm.
even thinking of it.
Yeah, I did all 3 of them in the same setting, I can still remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah. And a door
Mhm.
opens up.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
when we let him into those doors, he goes deeper and deeper and deeper. It's
mhm.
amazing. Yeah. It was an amazing feeling.
Yep, you gotta definitely open your heart and let him in, and he'll do all the healing you want,
Yeah.
but you have to be willing. I know there's some areas I'm like, can we not touch on that yet? That's gonna take a while."
Right.
And I know if I don't do it, he's just gonna, like, do it in lessons, and I'm like, "That's gonna be more painful." It really is. I just know it. Like, that's how he does things with me. It's either, like, brick wall, kind of, "Hey, look, you need to do something here," or it's little nudges, or it's complete breakdown. And if I
Right.
don't let him in for, like, the complete breakdown part, which is the easiest and fastest way, then it's, like, long, drawn out little
Yep.
brick walls and all the other things, and I'm like, "Why didn't I just sit down with you one day and just be like, 'Alright, let's do this?'" It's so much simpler.
It makes suffering a little more understandable.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding suffering. Now, I've made a lot of horrible choices. Why do we suffer? Well, because I'm dumb and I made a bunch of dumb choices that I made
Yeah.
my own suffering. But
Mhm.
what about those things that we didn't choose and that we were inherited? I didn't choose to have my mom leave me. I didn't choose to have a dad that was an alcoholic and tell me I'm a piece of crap. I didn't choose to be molested. I didn't choose to have a wife, take pain medication and live that for years. But it's like, why?
Mhm.
And it's very simple. Paul says in the Bible that we're to go through these trials and these sufferings because it grows us. And again, this is for everybody in the kingdom. It grows us to where we can now stand beside people that are
Mhm.
going through that same thing
Yep.
and now bring them through that and help them through that. And that's what he says. That's what suffering sometimes is for. And, it's just the world's just an ugly place. Unfortunately, we try to sell, hey, come know the Lord and he's going to be your personal butler and everything's going to be great. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, it's not because now you're going to have a bunch of spiritual warfare happening and it's going to be a mess sometimes. But, that's why we need that community to stand with other people too.
Mhm.
Because battling it alone sometimes is not fun. I know God gets people alone at times to make them great, but staying in that for too long will drive you crazy too.
Yep, I will indeed. Is there any other questions you have for me or anything else you wanna talk about?
Um, no, I just if your audience is interested in knowing a little bit more about recovery and 12 steps, and unfortunately, when people hear 12 steps, they think of those people, alcoholics and drug users.
Mhm.
And it's really not. 12 steps are for anybody that has an unhealthy habit. Anything that keeps you from your true identity and who you're made to be in Jesus Christ is a problem. And it could be as easy as social media. It could be you have anxiety. It could be depression. You're angry. You overeat. You're addicted to Diet Pepsi like me. Um, you know, anything that's an unhealthy habit is what we're here for, and we hope people get stuck from that.
Okay. You have a link for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
www.walkrightministries.com is where you can find all the information on the community, speaking engagements, coaching, counseling, coaching, whichever you want to call it. And I do a couple of podcasts myself, but they're just one is called Walk Right a Path to Healing, and
Mhm.
it's just a quick little devotional podcast, 13-15 minutes, and I tell a story and then tie it to a Bible verse. And then I just started for the community. I just started a 12-step uh, podcast. It's called Recovery in Identity, and we talk about these issues. We talk about um, healing and surrendering and the 12 steps that I've created for the program and the principles and how we manage and work our way through that stuff. So it's a pretty encouraging podcast too.
Yeah.
At least get some step work thought in your mind as you're walking or driving to work or walking around the house, whichever.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. Really enjoyed talking with you today.
No, I enjoyed talking to you. Sounds like we've walked the same path, and just to encourage others that are on that same journey. There is victory on the other side.
Mhm.
Um, you know, God is good. We don't just say that as a cliche. You have to know that and live that no matter what
Mhm.
circumstance you face. Because I don't live through circumstances. I don't have ups and downs. And I'm made to love. I woke up today to love.
Mhm.
And once you can live from that place and that freedom, man, life's good. I used to think people like me were weird. You're in church, you see these people that are just crazy, and it's like, man, those guys are kind of weird. But now I know what they were living. I really do. Now I know what they were
Yeah.
living. Because freedom is amazing, and God's love is amazing in that freedom.
Mhm.
So just to encourage your listeners, there's victory.
Yes.
Surrender and let them in.
Yes, most definitely.
And you, my new friend, find community
Okay.
because God wants you in community.
I'll work on that. If today's episode spoke to your heart, be sure to follow me and follow Silent No Longer so you never miss a new episode filled with healing and hope. Please share this episode with someone who may need to hear it. You never know the impact it could have. If you're ready to take the next steps in your own healing, you can take my free quiz to see if you may be in a toxic relationship. Schedule a free clarity call with me or read my story in Behind Closed Doors. Thank you for listening to Silent No Longer. Your story isn't over and healing is possible.